You probably don't need me to tell you what has prompted this video, but just in case, on Monday Night Football following West Ham's 3-2 win against Wolves, Jamie Carragher and Gary Neville engaged in what the Sky Sports YouTube team surprisingly didn't describe as a heated debate with regards to the 23-man squad that Gareth Southgate should take to Euro 2020, along with what either his best 11 or his 11 for England's opening game against Croatia should look like. And I say either because it was never really clarified which of those two the 11 was supposed to be. This is not so much a reaction or response video to that video as just a video inspired by me having watched that segment on Monday Night Football. But nonetheless, I will be referencing it and responding to certain comments made in it. So if you haven't watched it, feel free to check it out on the Sky Sports Football YouTube channel now, just so that you can be sure that I'm not misquoting or misrepresenting anyone. And then come back. Okay, assuming you've all watched it now, we will crack on. So naturally, being a football-based YouTube channel and an England fan, with a large section of this channel's following being based in England, I was always likely to make a video about the England squad for Euro 2020 at some stage. The MNF segment has just prompted me to do it a bit earlier than scheduled. Normally, I just hold off until a little closer to the tournament because inevitably someone always picks up a knock towards the end of the season. Please don't let it be Harry Kane. Please. But that's not a problem. I'll share my own 23-man England squad and preferred starting 11 in just a moment, but as the title of this video suggests, my real gripe with both Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher's England squad selection, though I'm sure they are not alone on this front, is the omission of Jadon Sancho. So I just wanted to talk a bit about that, why I think England would be borderline insane to leave him out, and some of the reasons why Neville and Carragher made what I think is a pretty remarkable blunder from two often very entertaining and insightful pundits. I'm just getting that compliment in there before I take to their omission of Jadon Sancho with a sledgehammer. It was about 15 minutes into the segment that the host David Jones first brought up Jadon Sancho's name, describing him as someone who, quote, really probably burst onto the scene last season. I mean, Sancho scored 13 goals, made 15 assists, and was probably one of the best players in the Bundesliga in the season before last, at the age of 19, but he was even better last season, so we'll just let that slide for now. Jamie Carragher's justification for leaving Sancho out is that he just hasn't really been convinced by him in an England shirt yet, and that with the emergence of Phil Foden and Jack Grealish as part of England's front three, someone had to miss out. So let's examine that justification for a moment, shall we? On the face of it, it seems quite reasonable. Sure, he's done well for Dortmund, but others have played better for England, and there's lots of competition in his position. Well, let's start with that first claim, that Sancho hasn't done much in an England shirt, because I think most people will hear that and think it seems like a pretty fair assessment. He certainly hasn't had too many memorable moments with the three lions at senior level. And indeed, a quick look at Sancho's England stats, on the face of it, don't make for all that impressive reading. He's scored 3 goals from 18 caps, which isn't bad going for a 21-year-old, but it's hardly nailed on inclusion form, is it? Except, when we break those stats down, the story becomes a little more opaque. Only half of Sancho's 18 England caps have been starts, and he played fewer than 20 minutes as a substitute in the other half. What's more, Sancho has only actually completed a full 90 minutes for England on 4 occasions, and he either scored or assisted in every one of those games. In total, Sancho has played 843 minutes of football for England, during which time he has made 8 goal contributions, giving him, on average, either a goal or an assist once every 105 minutes. Of course, goals and assists aren't the only measure of a performance, and that is still less productive than Sancho has been for Dortmund, but it just gives you a better indication of how he has done for England than that simplistic 3 goals from 18 cap stat. Even more curiously is the fact that Jamie Carragher's squad does include the likes of Reece James, Phil Foden and Jack Grealish, none of whom have set the world alight in an England shirt. Reece James has won 6 caps for England and was sent off in only his second start against Denmark. Phil Foden has won 6 caps and has only really had 1 outstanding game in the Nations League against Iceland, and Jack Grealish has won 5 caps. He is yet to record a goal or an assist in a competitive fixture, and his most impressive performance came in a defeat against Belgium, where he provided a rare bright spark for England in what was in truth a pretty drab performance from the rest of the team. To be clear, I think that Reece James, Phil Foden and Jack Grealish are all brilliant players, But if the justification for leaving Sancho out is that he hasn't done enough for England, when he has done more than any of those names, all of whom Carragher did pick, personally I find that a little unusual. Most bizarre of all though, has to be the inclusion of Jude Bellingham, while Sancho misses out. Make no mistake, Bellingham has looked really bright for a 17-year-old, and to be getting consistent minutes at Dortmund at his age is remarkable. But no one who watches the Bundesliga, even fleetingly, would put Jude Bellingham in the same ballpark as Jadon Sancho right now. It would be like someone who doesn't watch Premier League football picking out Billy Gilmour ahead of Jack Grealish. I am aware that Gilmour is Scottish, just for the record. I'm just using two players who play in similar positions to Bellingham and Sancho. You would quite rightly think that they didn't have the faintest idea what they were talking about. Which, with the greatest of respect, and I like Jamie Carragher as a pundit most of the time, I think is the case in this instance with regards to him and the Bundesliga. Then there's that remark about Phil Foden and Jack Grealish's emergence. Perfectly reasonable, you might think. Who could deny that both players' stock and reputation have increased massively this season? Certainly not me. But why should that mean that Sancho misses out? Has his reputation declined this season? Not in the eyes of anyone who watches him, it hasn't. There are a great many English centre-forwards who have experienced pretty rapid rises either this season or last. There's Dominic Calvert-Lewin, Ollie Watkins, Patrick Bamford, and even the re-emergence of Danny Ings if you like. Does that mean that Harry Kane no longer makes the England squad? Of course it doesn't. It seems like a very strange rationale to me. It's almost as if Sancho is being punished for emerging a couple of seasons earlier than Foden and Grealish, and for having been consistently excellent for the last 3 years, rather than having been less impressive in prior seasons, thus enjoying a more rapid ascent over the last 12 months. It doesn't really make any sense. I think there is an idea within English football that Sancho was brilliant last season but has dropped off a bit this year, which isn't really true. I think it stems from the fact that Sancho had a slightly slower start to this season in terms of scoring goals compared to his tremendous 2019-20 campaign. In terms of those stats from last season, just to be clear, Sancho scored 20 goals and made 20 assists for Borussia Dortmund. I mean, seriously, who else managed that in Europe's top 5 leagues last season? There's Messi, obviously, there's always Messi, but was there anyone else? I can't think of anyone. I know Salah didn't, Sterling didn't, Cristiano Ronaldo didn't. I mean, I could easily be forgetting someone, but even if I've missed one player, it's worth taking a moment to appreciate how ridiculous that is, and the level that Sancho has been operating at. Okay, so we have established that Sancho was truly special last season. But what about this season, after his perhaps slightly sluggish start to the season? Currently, Sancho has scored 12 goals and made 16 assists so far this season, giving him a combined total of 28 goal contributions in 31 games. Or, to put it in an even more digestible context, Sancho averaged a goal or an assist once every 82 minutes last season, and he has done so once every 89 minutes so far this season. Discounting his semi-slow start then, Sancho didn't score a league goal until Dortmund's 14th Bundesliga game this season. That actually means that the form Sancho was in prior to his current injury setback was better than his form last season. In fact, in his last 6 games before his current setback, Sancho had made 8 goal contributions. 8. Mason Greenwood has made 11 goal contributions in 40 appearances this season, averaging a goal or an assist once every 212 minutes. Yet he made Gary Neville's squad. Look, I hate getting bogged down in the stats, but I feel like me just saying, trust me, Jadon Sancho has been really good this season, he is really good at football, and it would be mental not to take him to the Euros, probably wouldn't cut it as an argument. The fact of the matter is that Jadon Sancho is outperforming the likes of Leroy Sané, Serge Gnabry, Kingsley Coman, Marco Reus, and pretty much everyone in the Bundesliga, with the exception of Robert Lewandowski, Erling Haaland, and probably Thomas Muller this season. That is how good he is, and how good he has been. I don't think there is a national team in world football, and I'm including France in this, who would leave Jadon Sancho out of their squad for this summer's Euros. And I think that German football fans, who obviously tend to consume more Bundesliga football than the English, would laugh their heads off if Gareth Southgate were to leave a fully fit Jadon Sancho out of his squad. If we are seriously saying that Jadon Sancho isn't good enough to make a 23-man England squad, we are making a pretty bold claim about the strength of this squad. If you are of the opinion that England have 5 or 6 forward options who are stronger than Jadon Sancho, I think you are fairly conclusively claiming that England have the best set of forwards of any national team on earth. Don't get me wrong, I do think that England have a fantastic forward line right now, most notably with Kane through the middle and great depth on the flanks. But anyone who would leave a fully fit Sancho out of the England squad either doesn't have any idea how good he is, or thinks that every single one of the England wingers that they would pick are world class. Because, make no mistake, by almost any definition, Jadon Sancho is world class. And there is neither a better dribbler of the ball in the Bundesliga, nor one available to Gareth Southgate, than Jadon Sancho. That is my Sancho soapbox done and dusted. I just felt obliged to get that off my chest, and one of the many nice things about having a football-based YouTube channel is having the platform to respond to these kind of things when I feel as though I have a pretty strong opinion on any given subject. Since Carragher and Neville both shared their England squads in either best or opening game 11s, and I have criticised them for one of their selection decisions, I thought it would be only right for me to share my own. So this would be my England squad. Pickford, Dean Henderson, Pope, Alexander-Arnold, Walker, Maguire, Stones, Keane, Mings, Shaw, Chilwell, Rice, Jordan Henderson, Mount, Foden, Ward-Prowse, Phillips, Kane, Sterling, Rashford, Sancho, Grealish and Calvert-Lewin. It would have been quite funny, after all that, if I just left Sancho out, wouldn't it? And my ideal England 11 would be a 4-2-3-1 with Nick Pope in net, Alexander-Arnold and Shaw as the fullbacks, Maguire and Stones partnering one another at centre-back, Rice and Henderson as the double pivot in midfield, Phil Foden playing as a number 10 in front of them, Raheem Sterling, and Jadon Sancho on the flanks, and obviously Sir Harry of Kane leading the line, as England's brightest light and future all-time leading goalscorer, in my eyes at least. To be absolutely clear, that is the 23-man squad and 11 that I would pick. I don't think for 1 second that is the squad or 11 that Gareth Southgate will pick, and I'm fine with that. It's a game of opinions. I think that Pope is England's best goalkeeper by a mile, and I think his ability to keep the ball out of the back of his net more than compensates for what he lacks in terms of his distribution. But I would be amazed if Southgate dropped Pickford, who has never let him down in all fairness. Again, at right back, I think Alexander-Arnold is simply too talented to miss out, though I agree with Neville and Carragher on this one, in the sense that right back spot could be rotated depending upon the opposition. I think the rest of the back four just about picks itself. I guess the bigger mission from my starting 11 is Mason Mount, who Southgate will obviously start. And again, I've no real issue with that. Personally, I think Rice and Henderson can do the necessary mopping up between them, and I think Phil Foden is the best player England have in terms of receiving the ball on the half turn, beating players, and making things happen. He is a unique talent and the future of the England team in my eyes, which is why I made space for him. On the flanks, I'd be happy with any combination of Rashford, Sterling and Sancho, but I went for Sancho on the right flank. Oh, and this is actually another great point that I should have mentioned earlier as to why Sancho simply has to make the squad, and that's because he is the only one of England's wide players that plays predominantly on the right side of a front three. Rashford, Sterling, Grealish, unless you're taking Mason Greenwood, every one of those wide players plays predominantly on the left flank for their club teams. And whilst Sterling is more than capable of playing on the right, not having anyone else who can play there, as is the case with Jamie Carragher's squad, with the possible exception of Phil Foden, who has only played a couple of games there this season, is utter insanity. Anyhow, those are my thoughts on Jadon Sancho, how grossly underrated he is by those who think that the Premier League is the be-all and end-all when it comes to club football, and my ideal England squad and 11, which I think there is about as much chance of actually being Gareth Southgate's starting 11 against Croatia as me getting a call at myself. But I thought it was only right that I include mine for you to scrutinise nonetheless. Thank you all as ever for tuning in. I hope that you enjoyed today's video. Please leave a like if that was the case. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, and make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications for HITC Sevens if you don't already. You can also find me on social media on Twitter and Instagram by the username @HITC Sevens on both, should you wish to do so.